Hi, and welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel. A few years ago, we built a DIY fish pond in our garden. I've shown a couple videos on this in the past, including water plants, the fish dome, and some of the filter setup. This video is kind of a follow-up, as well as a dumping ground for the last year or so worth of footage related to this pond. I'm going to try to keep things chronological, but I have footage from 4 or 5 cameras, so you might notice the season jump around a little bit. Before the pond froze over for the winter, we sunk some of the more frost-sensitive plants down to the bottom where it stays warmer. That's where the fish like to hang out all winter. We put these little buoys so we can recover our plants in the spring. And now that it is spring, we're starting to pull those up. And the fish are very curious about this operation. Here's what the pond looks like from a fish's point of view. I've been experimenting with some underwater drones and remote camera submarines. You might see more of those in some other videos. The fish dome, or inverted aquarium, gets put away for the winter since I don't think it would survive freezing. When the weather starts staying consistently warm, we reinstall it in the pond. Here's a look up inside the dome from the inside. This is what the fish see when they're in the dome. It really gives them a different perspective on the world. They really do like to hang out in there, especially in the evenings. The dome warms up in the sun during the day, so I think it's a little bit like a fish hot tub. Our 2 cats also enjoy watching the fish in the dome, although they still haven't figured out how to catch any. 2022 had some challenging weather for gardening. It was a very dry year. Towards the beginning of the year, I actually put in 2 new 500-gallon water tanks. You might see those in another video from last spring. It was so dry that we didn't even fill a single one of those tanks completely. I had them hooked to 2 different gutters on the garage, and I think we only got about 250 gallons in total from both gutters during the entire summer. We've also had at least 1 major hailstorm in 2022. This damaged a few of the plants, and I was worried it would damage the glass fish dome. Fortunately, that thing is made out of borosilicate laboratory glassware, so it's pretty tough, and the dome made it through just fine. Having a pond in the yard hugely increases the amount of wildlife that we see. We get tons of interesting birds. We've also seen rabbits and a woodchuck. And then, of course, we get a lot of neighborhood cats coming by for a drink and for a try at the birds.
Are you loud?
Some less welcome visitors are the local raccoons, who like to mess around with the pond. Some of the plants are perched on a shelf just below the water surface, and the raccoons push them off into the deeper water. They also push rocks and other landscaping into the deep section, and if I can't manage to pick up this stuff with a stick or a claw tool, I have to get in there and pull the things out myself. There's a little baby goldfish, starting to get a little bigger. I don't know how many of these little guys are going to make it and how many are just going to get eaten by everything else in here. And some of the little tadpoles are just starting to get little stubby legs. Sometimes we get snails in the dome. There's actually one of the really big fat ones that's climbed all the way up the support structure and into the fish dome. And now he's just cruising around eating all the algae in there. I think the toads are actually smaller than the tadpoles they came from. So another ongoing pond project is to track down leaks. We've got kind of a low water level today. It's supposed to be up well over the bottom of that dome, and as you can see, it's down a good 5-6 inches right here. So we've been losing quite a bit of water. The fish don't mind too much, but some of the plants are starting to get exposed and it just looks ugly. Now, part of the water loss is probably from evaporation and probably from the plants using up the water, but I think some of it is also coming from our swamp here. The way the water comes up through the swamp filter, it kind of bubbles up through the bottom, and we've got so many reeds and cattails growing in here that their root systems have kind of clogged up the middle of the swamp. So I believe what's happening is the water is now being pushed up the edges, and it's kind of being pushed under the decorative rocks around the edge here. Underneath here, there's a rubber liner, but the water's coming up the side of that liner, getting pushed under the rocks, and basically leaking out. What I'm going to try to do today is pull out some of these cattails, carefully set them aside in this box, because I actually like the cattails. I don't want to just throw them all away. Then I can excavate the mud around the edges here. So that's why our water isn't flowing correctly, because the entire swamp pond is basically filled with these root tendrils. So we got to pull a lot of these out. I'm trying to save some of these because they do look pretty. Okay, second day of trying to excavate these cattails from the swamp, and I was only able to get about half of it done in the first day. So while the swamp is off, we've got our emergency filter set up here. This little canister bucket filter. So that's bypassing from the pump in the pond. Just has some lava rocks in the bottom of this bucket, and that keeps the pond kind of clean. It's not as clean as the main swamp filter, but it's enough to keep the fish happy for now. Alright, after 2 days of work, we have finally gotten all of the cattails out of the pond, and all of the roots dug out. They were super deep. These root masses are just huge. I guess I should have known that about cattails, but I didn't know that. So anyway, we've got all that cleared out. We've got a nice level of clean mud. Gonna build it up a little bit to just below this lip so that the mud isn't flowing into the main pond. Maybe put some sand on top, and then we'll start putting back some of the cattails that we've saved. And we'll put some of these bigger rocks around the edge of the pond just so it doesn't look quite so ugly. Hopefully that should be good for the rest of the summer. Okay, so we only got a few of the cattails back in. Some of them are tipping over significantly. And then we've got some interesting sand boils for our filter here, so I'm not sure if that's running at peak efficiency. Pond water, definitely still very murky. Again, the fish don't seem to care too much. I'd like to get more water in here so I can refill the dome, but we want to see if this is leaking first. So got a little measuring stick set up so I can see if the pond is still losing water. Hopefully it's not, now that we've redone that pond. Alright, the pond is doing much better after removing some of those cattails. Next spring, we'll probably dig out the swamp filter and rearrange some of the piping so it's a little easier to maintain and things work a little better. Okay, that's all I've got for this pond update video. Stay tuned for more this summer when we redo the filter, or check out some of my older pond videos for more on the design and construction. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Touch the fishy.